Another development, Apple clashes with another UK regulator, the Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA, warning Apple is warning them that proposed tech rules will harm users and stifle innovation. So here we go.
Lucy, can you tell us a bit more about what tech rules, what regulatory rules Apple is objecting to here?
Yeah, basically, Apple's issued a warning to the government. Basically, the Competition and Markets Authority would give regulators new powers to address the market dominance of companies like Apple and Google. And Apple fears these rules would characterize it as an EU style. So they're saying this in the UK, and they're getting very sort of Brexity about it, undermining privacy and security protections for it that its users expect. It will force it to give away its technology to rivals, to hinder its ability to innovate and expose users to scams.
But what do the CMA want Apple to do?
Well, they basically want to open up the Apple Store. You need to be able to buy, as an engineer, everything has to be vetted and go through the Apple Store. All payments have to go through the sort of payment system that Apple has approved, or even their own Apple Pay. The proposed new rules would affect App Store in following ways. It would create a market where the Apple on the phone would have to offer alternative payment systems. The app review and ranking, you get your app rejected without transparency. You just sort of do an app, you send it to engineers, and they decide whether code is Apple quality or not. And also interoperability. A question for Alice, really, just to help people sort of understand what this is about. You love iPhones. You've got an iPhone. I love my iPhone. Do you recall how you pay for things using your iPhone?
What, with Apple Pay?
Yeah. Is there any other payment system on the iPhone?
Yeah, there's like Apple Wallet and stuff.
Right. So that is Apple. It's smooth.
Yeah.
It's seamless.
Yeah, you double
I
click,
love Apple
don't
Pay.
you?
Yeah. Emily, you specialise in efforts to combat scams and fraud. Are Apple working with others to make sort of more general solutions to scams and fraud, or is it because of their sealed box that they don't really need to enter the discussion?
Well, Apple, of course, is this enormously successful organisation. Apple iPhones are hugely popular, and part of Apple's unique selling point is its care for people's privacy and security. Its willingness to get onto the front foot and challenge governments if they're going to make it undermine its security. What I'm hearing here in this discussion is what I'd call regulatory tropes. So what it seems to really be about is you've got these organisations with huge market power, and the regulator is saying, well, there needs to be a bit more transparency, there needs to be opportunity for others to come into your system and compete. And the organisation in question, in this case it's Apple, but it could be any other, is saying, oh, you're trying to shut down innovation, you're going to stifle all good things and make people unsafe. To your question about Apple's sort of out there, how far is Apple out there in communities who are combating scams and fraud? I tend not to see them on the circuit, whereas you do see the other big tech, you see a lot of financial institutions and others. Apple is quite notable in its absence. I'm not really sure of the reasons why, because it very clearly cares about its customers' security. So this sounds like, the regular back and forth between a regulator and a target of that regulation.
It makes me think, as an engineer, of security a bit like an airport. And if you have one channel to go into, there's only one door, the security is more concentrated. However, once you get through the security in the airport, you see lots of competing retailers within that ecosystem. You don't just see, in Heathrow, for example, Heathrow shops and nothing else, because there are security issues.
Or you could go through the security channel, or you could go through somebody else's security channel. There are some times when you just need to do that. I don't know whether a phone is that sort of environment, but I'm really interested in Alice's reaction to it, which is like it's a wonderfully seamless situation. You can just pay for things with a double click on your iPhone. For a consumer, it feels safe, it feels very predictable. And in the kind of like huge picture of what happens to technologies, sort of new technologies, and this is something Tim Wu pointed out in his brilliant book about 10 years ago, is they start very, very open, but they're also very confusing and very insecure for people. And what people love is a sense of predictability and a sense of safety in their interactions with technology. So almost all open systems end up becoming closed, and then the regulator needs to come in and open up those systems again to provide for innovation from others.
As an engineer, I'm interested in the fact that a lot of security issues, Alice, are not just what we call platform issues, Mac, iPhone, Google, Android, but they are actually fake ID, embedded threat URLs in content that happen as much in iPhone as anywhere else. So a lot of the scams and fraud are actually pulling people off their phones to phishing websites and things like that. As an engineer, I also love interoperability. I don't know if you remember, Alice, sort of this, there used to be this battle between Mac and Windows, and if you had it, have you, as a music composer, a lot of the products on Windows were seem to be like really for Windows only or for Mac only.
Yeah,
have you encountered that much?
So we say interoperability, and that sounds like a very technical concept, but it is, I feel like, what platform you use, what apps you use, it's almost like a religion. And particularly anything creative, it's like, you know, if you're a music composer and it's a choice between Musical or Sibelius, it's like you have to learn a new language.
Right.
You have to learn to use the software as much as you need to learn the skill. And particularly, the Apple versus Windows debate continues even now.
Emily.
And it's something that's amazing about the internet, which is just so there we forget about it, is none of that applies. Whether you're on a Mac, whether you're on a phone, whether you're on Windows, you can look up your Wikipedia page and you will get the exact same experience. Now, how, you know, where the tabs are on your screen might differ, but you can use the internet. And that was one of the reasons, I think, where the internet went from this kind of small research project into something that was globally enormous overnight, was because it offered interoperability and it offered universality of experience.
We're just about there. A challenge for Apple, I think. Apple executives, who's telling you this? Is it your marketing people or your engineering people? If you ask your engineering people, are you clever enough to modify Apple's products and engineering platform to make it interoperable and secure? Or is it one or the other? We either focus on interoperability and dump security, or we dump interoperability. I think you, Apple, at the top of Apple, will be quite surprised by your engineers' answers. And just to ask people who are listening to this, are you an Apple owner? Do you like everything Apple? Would you like to buy non-Apple apps on your phone, or are you happy with Apple only?